Hi, welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah. I'm with the Midwest Writing Center. And on this web series, we once a week will give a super short writing lesson, and once a week we'll interview somebody doing something awesome in the arts. As you perhaps can tell, we will be talking about a book today. After we do our kick-ass interview with the author of this book, I'll give updates on the Writing Center, and then we'll have a free write for you to do in your own time. Today we are talking to Kai Parker, who is a writer, parent, and big believer in everyday magic. Inspired by their daughter and the beauty of being different, Kai writes stories that help kids feel seen, loved, and proud of who they are. Dandelion's Magic is their first children's book. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, Kai.
Hi.
I'm gonna first compliment this book because I love it. I'm gonna read the back of it so folks who maybe haven't already picked it up, and they should. It's available at the Atlas Collective if you're a Quad City local. Um, we'll have some grounding in what the story is. In a garden full of colorful flowers, Dandelion doesn't quite fit in. She's not as bright, not as fancy. Sometimes she's even called a weed. But when a child's wish carries her far from home, she discovers what makes her different is also what makes her special. I have to say, that alone makes me feel good. Um, I think that tells us pretty well what it's about. And your bio did say you're inspired by your daughter.
Mhm.
Um, but can you give a little more background on your inspiration for this? Like did you like see a dandelion one day?
Yeah, so my daughter Joey she's 6 now. She has always kind of loved dandelions. She is autistic and one of the things that she just always loved to do was no matter where we were, we would have to stop and pick dandelions. And she's probably 4. We had the conversation of, why aren't there dandelions all year round? And explained that, there are, that the flowers that you're making wishes on are also dandelions. The dandelions just change. And she thought that was the greatest thing ever, but couldn't say the word dandelion, which makes sense, but called them wishes and baby wishes. And so that went on for a year or two, and it was not this past spring, but the spring before. We were out with a family member, and she had picked a bunch of baby wishes and gave them to my family member, and not even thinking, and like didn't mean anything bad by it. The family member just said that it was a weed, and Jocelyn was really upset, and she's like, "No, it's not. This is a flower." And if for anybody who's ever met Joey, she is just her own kind of magic and always brings light to every room she walks in.
Can
And
confirm.
yeah, so it kind of, from that conversation with the family member and how upset she was, it kind of came from there that, she is a dandelion in her own kind of way, that even though she's got these diagnoses and all of these things that make her different from the people around her, that she's magical, and um, kind of just developed from there.
I love that. That's so organic. And I also, of course, have to butt in with my semantics. I have a really cool book called, I think it's called American Wildflowers. It's an anthology compiled by Susan Barba, who's an editor at New York Review Books. Um, and in it, there's a discussion. It's mostly like other people's work, but in the intro, in the like about this book bit, there's a discussion of like what is a wildflower and or what is a weed? How do we determine it? Like where where do we get this language? You know, this nerdy stuff that I really like.
Yeah.
Um, and while I think most people know that weed is really just what we call plants we don't like, um, it confirms that like there's like that's a history and that's something that changes. But it is really just like It's not even necessarily something that's invasive or something you can't get rid of or something that chokes out other plants. Because I know I heard that as a kid. We have to get rid of the dandelions because it'll choke out our petunias or whatever. Um, we didn't have petunias. We had impatiens. But which is funny too, because impatiens are annuals. Like they're not they're not getting choked out by anything. You replant them every year.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that is true. It's just based on cultural preference in the
Right.
moment. And that's so I just think that that really deepens the metaphor.
Yeah, we actually plant dandelions in our yard. It's partially for Joey, but partially her three-toed box turtle paintbrush. They're her favorite flower too. So she loves to eat them. So we do a lot of things. And it's crazy because like since writing the book, I've had like people tell me all of this like dandelion stuff that I didn't know before. Like there's people who make like dandelion jelly and it's supposed to be really good for like your digestive system. And there's people who use like dandelion lotion and it's supposed to be really good for your skin. And so like the dandelion itself has all of these like benefits and things that it does for our bodies that we just mow over them or spray so they don't come back without realizing how cool they can actually be too.
That's wild. You know, I have to when I how do I say this? When I hear that something's being I don't know, demonized, I have to wonder why. And I didn't really I sort of would have assumed if if you asked me this morning that it was something like it's too common and we want to show off our garden.
Yeah.
But that it's so useful, I didn't know that. I knew you could eat it and I knew you could eat it and I knew people make wine. Um, but like that it's so useful and also demonized is just horrifying.
I mean, I think people just don't like the way they look in their grass because they pop up on their own and spread on
I
their
have
own
a
with the
lot of not
green.
literary feelings about grass. So we should we should change the subject before I get controversial. Um, right. Okay, so I really love that occurred organically and that the metaphor is just so obvious and natural to you as you work with it. Actually, if you don't mind, and it's okay if you do mind talking about rainbow brain, I think that that's a really um useful concept that you gave me.
Yeah, so that's actually the next book that I'm working on.
Shut up. I'm amazing.
Yeah, it's
Not at all surprised though.
I have it all completely written out. The one thing about me is that writing comes super easy for me. I'm lucky for in that aspect of
Wow.
it, but the illustrations, not so much. And because this has a little bit more people and settings in it than Dandelion's Magic does. It's a little bit harder for me to do the illustrations, but I'm working with some people to in the area to kind of work through that. But Rainbow Brain, and I think I don't remember exactly how my husband and I came up with the process of it. But Jocelyn was 3 when she was diagnosed with autism and kind of knew she was going to have it. Mom and dad both have it. And so we weren't really sure how to explain to a 3-year-old your brain doesn't work like everybody else's in a way that didn't sound negative. And so I had seen like an image or something on Facebook where they talked about, the autism spectrum isn't linear. It looks more like this, and it's like all the colors mixed together. And so that's how we explained to Jocelyn that she was autistic, was that she has a rainbow brain, and anybody who's neurodivergent has a rainbow brain. And the thing about rainbows is there really aren't two that are the same. that, some have more prominent colors than others, and some are darker than others, and some have more blue than they have pink, and, all of those kinds of things. And so I actually just made like a quick image, and I think I used Canva to put like a brain and make a couple different brains and make different areas that were different colors. And yep, there it is right there. So it's there's the picture I used to make it. And so some people have pink brains and some people have rainbow brains, and they just all look different. And so that's how we explained that she was autistic. And it resonated with a lot of people that I talked to that were neurodivergent. I think we've had the conversations quite a bit. And so yeah, that's the current book I'm working on, is about a little girl who is neurodivergent and struggling and can't figure out why. And she has this magical creature, magical guy come and give her glasses that she can see everybody's rainbow brain.
Oh, that's cool.
That's why the pictures are so hard.
That's cool. Well, segue. Awesome. You illustrated this book too.
Yes.
That's crazy. Talk about that.
So I watched like 200 hours of Procreate videos
Did you say
on,
200?
yes, on YouTube, um all day long, for like as I was working on writing it. And like, I workshopped it with a couple different local authors and worked with the Midwest Writing Center and all of those kinds of things. I would just play Procreate videos in the background. And so the illustrations are pretty basic, but it's because I took an art class in high school, and none of my drawing capabilities that I didn't even have then really transformed into adulthood. So luckily I was able to do it. And like, now that I look back at it, there's a couple pieces that I'm like, oh, that could have been better. But of course, uh, it's not something that I'm very talented at, and not something that I have a lot of experience with, which is why this next one's taking a little bit longer.
I mean, it's hold on, I'll hold it up. Um, it does what a picture book needs to do. It is very clear what's going on here. Um, there's no confusion, everything's cl like crisp. I was gonna say clear again. So I can't take issue with it.
She's cute, yeah, like it, but yeah, you can always get better.
So thank you. In this book, first we're learning about differences and accepting ourselves, right? Um, but I see also a thread about belonging in here. Is that I don't know, intentional, important to you, to the story?
Yeah, I think so for those who haven't read it yet, Dandelion is popped up in a garden and doesn't match the flowers that are in the garden, and doesn't feel like she's being nourished and taken care of by the gardener, because she's just a weed compared to like his roses and all of those kinds of things. And so she doesn't belong with those flowers, but ends up getting to be with some wildflowers where she has that sense of belonging. And um yeah, I think that part of what I wanted to kind of say with that is that y as a person, especially for kids, like we feel like if this person doesn't like me, that makes me the problem, and try to do all of those things. But I wanted mostly to tell Joey and other kids, like, you don't change yourself for the people around you. If you needed to, if they don't accept you for you who you are, you find new places, because somewhere there's going to be a group of people who love you and love you for all of who you are without having to change yourself.
I do love the little girl coming in. um, the character coming in at the end. Which I guess I don't know. That's not a spoiler. It's fine. Uh, um, and just really reinforcing Dandelion's worth. Um, and I also like, I guess maybe this is a unnecessary tangent, but um, looking back at the rainbow fish, it like upsets me so much I can feel it in my body that this kid was, well, I'm calling rainbow fish a kid. I don't
Yeah.
know. Um, this kid is like has something innate about him that is coveted by others, and they want it so bad, and it's, his body. And the lesson we're supposed to get out of this is like rip off your skin to please people. Um, I don't know. It's like I know it's supposed to be about sharing and like not being stingy, but the metaphor does not work for me. Um, because it is not something Rainbow Fish chose. It wasn't like that. Um,
Yeah, I kind of feel
and
that way too about like the ugly duckling because it wasn't until he was a swan and beautiful, like, oh yeah, while you were ugly, nobody liked you, but once you were
mhm.
beautiful, like that's when we liked you. Like you had to
Also,
change into that beautiful part to like you.
also just I recently like was thinking about that, and so I looked up baby swans, and they're not as cute as ducklings. That's true.
Right.
But they're like swans are predators and protectors,
Mhm.
and ducks are not.
Yeah.
Like it just they wouldn't be hanging out anyway.
Well, and like I mean, I think all baby animals are cute, but like
I mean, all baby animals are cute, but
swans
like
are
some are
cute.
cuter than others.
And like, I don't know about you, but I've seen ponds where there's swans and ducks, and they don't care about each other to put,
They
like,
don't care.
no, you can't be here because you're ugly.
Yeah, sorry. So what I'm really grateful for is that like at no point is the dandelion told to change or like learning some lesson about what makes you worthy, right? Well, I guess dandelion is learning that just being makes you worthy. Because for whatever reason, yeah, there's a lot of children's books that are like, once you change, we'll like you. That's just upsetting. I don't know. It's just upsetting.
Yeah.
I will say something I assume Ugly Duckling is really old. I don't know that for sure. Um, and I wonder if it like was once a folk tale that had more to it or something.
Could be.
And the way my brain is going is like, so maybe it was didactic in some way that was not about aesthetics, but I don't know.
You would
Uh,
hope, but
sometimes a story is just a story, I guess. Okay. So, I know first, I just know this, but also I know a lot of authors. So I know this saw a few drafts at least. Are there any? Okay, this is two questions, and I'm gonna ask them both at the same time. Were there any like learning curves, bumps in the road, that feel significant, and or were there any changes to your original story that surprised you?
I don't, I mean, I think the hardest curve for me was that um I write a lot of poetry and things like that, is where like I kind of started, and like I've got more adult centered books that I'm like writing that I'm used to and better at. And so making the changes to my writing style from what I would be presenting to an adult versus what I'd be presenting to a child was a little chaotic for me, because it like there were lots of words on the pages to say the same thing that was a little bit too complex. And so that was a big change that I had to learn. And part of that, I'm real lucky to have other writers like the Midwest Writing Center to help me with that. But I also have a mom and mother-in-law who are teachers who gave feedback to help me through part of that as well. The biggest change from like say my first draft to the final draft is that the original draft, the little girl who comes to visit the garden had a name. Um, and I took that out in the final draft. She still looks like the little girl she was named after, but she's not actually named in the book.
That's I'm really happy I asked that. And also I'm thank you for the shout out. We like shout outs. Um, because I try to play between genre all the time. Um, but I don't often think about audience. Um, and when writing for an audience, and you are, um, whether or not, you're writing a children's book, it's for children. You have to think about language. I know there are whole like fields of study about how many words you should use and how children learn from books and small children. But the I imagine that the thing that's happening in your brain is kind of complex when you're thinking like this is how I would tell the story, and then you have to be like, oh, but how do you understand it?
Yeah.
I want to think about that. I want to talk about that more. That's so that's that's a sweet spot for me. How our brains work when we're writing. So prior to this situation, with the dandelions in real life, had you had you considered writing for children?
I mean, I've always written and I've always like wanted to write, but I had never really thought about kids' books until I had my daughter. And I started reading kids' books all the time. And so that got me a little bit more like, hey, I could, there's this book needs to be made. Like something like this is missing from, you know, that could be beneficial to people. And I think that's kind of where it came from. If I wasn't a mother, I don't think I would have. But because, I read a billion kids' books, it kind of came from there. And now I know lots about kids' books.
Yeah, there's such a wide variety of quality in children's books
Yeah.
and picture books. I mean, in all books, but I just sometimes the one they want to read every single day is fantastic, and sometimes the one they want to read every single day makes you want to cry from boredom. So, just really, yeah, I understand how many books one can read to their child.
Yeah. And like we've because writing and reading in general is such a big part of my life. I mean, I'm usually reading and writing, at least reading a book or two at once, and always writing. I wanted my daughter to be introduced to it from like a young age. So even before she was born, I was, whatever adult book I was reading to her out loud while she was
Oh.
in the womb. Um, Funny story, actually. I was stuck in the hospital while I was pregnant, and a friend that lives in Iowa City brought me a copy of Lord of the Rings. And so I still have the copy that was like I read her the entire every
Mhm.
Lord of the Rings book and The Hobbit before she was even born.
My heart.
Um, and so from like yeah, an early age we got her reading, and I'm a lover of banned books, and I do the queer lending library at the Project of the Quad Cities, and so I wanted to make sure that those kind of books got shared, and so we read lots of books. At least we so far today, I think we've read three. We had books that had to go back to the library, and I ordered two of them because they were so cute that I wanted to keep them.
It's kind of great that that reading doubles as research, since you're gonna do it anyway. It's I don't have any small children in my daily world. So if I set out to write a picture book, I mean, I've read 1,000 or a million picture
Yeah.
books. But if I set out to write a picture book today, I would have to go on my own to find picture books instead of it just being part of life. So like that really is I hope, dear writers, that you don't think that you know everything and you know that you should read if you want to write.
Yeah.
So that I mean that is nice. Plus, you know, hopefully it's usually fun. Um, you do run the lending library, and I didn't even think of including that today. Um, do you wanna talk about that? I realize we're sort of jumping from children to older children.
Well, I mean,
We're all children here.
we have kids' books at the lending library too. They're on the bottom shelves. Yeah,
Wait, hold on. I wanna preface this with you mentioned banned books, you mentioned the lending library at the Project of the Quad Cities. And we've had you and Joey at our banned book celebration for the last 3 years, I think.
sure, yeah.
Um, which has been, first of all, obviously is always a total delight because Joey's perfect. Uh, but it's also really cool to see this human grow and understand grow into understanding like what this event is about and bringing her favorites to the event. It's really, really special. So we know that you are invested in banned books from that, but you started the lending library at for folks who don't know, the Project of the Quad Cities is a queer-centered resource place. Um, we don't, yeah, we're
Yeah,
umbrella-ing
pretty
right
much.
now.
Yeah.
And there we go.
Yeah. So, there are lots of laws in Iowa that affect queer youth. And I saw that there wasn't a big resource for those queer youth to hear stories about them. And so that was my main focus when I started it, was that if we had, a queer kid coming in and want like while they're hanging out doing whatever they're doing there, waiting for appointments, the pharmacy, whatever like that, that they could have somewhere that, we didn't have to take their name. We didn't have to, provide information because, maybe they're too scared to get a library card in their town because it's going to have their dead name on it, or, their library doesn't have the books that are about them. And so I started it with books from my own collection to start with. It was books that I had that I loved, and books of Joey's that we had and loved and wanted other kids to be able to see and love. And from there, we've gotten a huge community backing for it, that it's now an entire bookshelf overflowing with new titles coming in and out all the time, of books that are not just queer centered, but that have BIPOC authors and characters, or female authors and characters, because those also have voices that are often muted in the public. And then, yeah, at the very bottom two shelves are little baskets of specifically youth books. that are for kids, whose maybe his parents are coming in or, they're trying. And so there's lots of different books there.
I do think, I mean, obviously we love libraries and shout out to libraries. Uh, for also they will supply what their um, patrons ask for.
Yeah.
But school libraries don't have the same freedom. And anytime we see book bans or challenged books, it's to school libraries. Um, and if you're under 16 or really any age without access to transportation, you're not necessarily going to be able to get to the public library. I mean, I know growing up, there was not a library near me. Um, the I don't even have any idea if my parents didn't take me to the library, how I could have ever gotten there. It was just not nearby. Um, it's funny because now there's a library pretty close to where I grew up, but there wasn't then.
Yeah, and
And
I
I don't.
like a lot of kids, don't always want to talk to their parents about those kinds of things. And, maybe their parents, they're not ready to ask their parents, or they, are small town Iowa. Who are they going to see at the library while they're checking that out? Or like when they go to Walmart, because that's usually what are in those small towns to buy it. Who's going to see that? Or like if they order it online and their parents aren't necessarily a safe resource, if parents open the mail and those kinds of things. And so, I don't care what their roadblock is. I just wanted to overcome it because unfortunately, there's so many things targeting our queer and trans youth, not in just Iowa, but everywhere. And I wanted to make one thing about that.
It is also important. I think, I see people like family members of mine occasionally will hear about a law or a proposed bill that I think is, overtly and inherently evil. And they think that it's great and like pertaining to parents' access to information about their children, right? And what's wonderful about them thinking it's a terrible, or I mean, them thinking that it's a wonderful bill is what they see, what they believe is that children are safe um, to talk with their family members, right? But the situation is not always that. Sometimes children are not safe to have the conversation with their family, but sometimes they're just feeling things out and they're not ready to put words to it. And so stuff like books can be really, really helpful for just giving us an understanding and helping us sort through our own thoughts.
Yeah.
Sorry, the cuddle bug. I do think that's a really, really special and important community resource, and I'm really happy that y'all are there doing that. Um, it's just my brain is now on that work, and I don't know if I've got a good segue back, but it doesn't matter. Uh, um, I do have a segue. Look at me. All I had to do was talk about it for a minute. This access to story, this access to literature is I think the intersection of our interests in our professional lives. Um, you work with medicine and well with healthcare, and general care, and of course I work with story more specifically. But um, these things are everything. Um, it used to I don't know how common because I went to teacher school for a little while, so I don't know how common the information is. But like I was talking about, there are people out there who study like how many words and what kinds of words should go in a children's book to make it picture book is what I'm talking about again, to make it both age appropriate and help them learn more and what stage of learning and you'll see they get different stamps and different names and stuff over time, but like you can see that on the back of the book. It's like this is for green readers
Yeah.
or whatever. Um, And the way that this is connected is when you saw that there was a story missing from the collections you had access to, you made sure that that story did not go untold. Um, Granted, what is so lucky for the rest of the world is that you had Joey to show you the story was necessary. Um, and I think so often, if we don't know a story is necessary, we don't know it's missing. Like I'm just like ranting now. Um, have you, obviously with Rainbow Brain coming, you've noticed there are other stories that are missing. Has that opened your eyes to those missing narratives? I know that we you mentioned in your lending library you've got um, traditionally marginalized voices is what you highlight. I'm sure that somebody will occasionally drop off a. I'm sorry, the first person I thought of was Steinbeck, but like he was silenced too. So I'm sure somebody occasionally will drop off a classic by a dead white man, and it's not like you're going to turn that away, but you prefer to highlight the lesser heard stories and voices. The question was, has this work both with writing these books and with um, running this lending library, has that opened you up to new information about what's missing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has just because I mean, I've always written, and I've always read. And so like after I wrote Dandelion's Magic in between starting Rainbow Brain, I started my like adult book that I'm working on. And the reason I started writing it was because I'm like, I don't like the way that bi characters are portrayed in, you know, adult books. Like usually they follow the, oh, I'm bi, I'm gonna be with the opposite gender and like not do anything. Or they're like, oh, now I'm bi, I'm going to be with the same gender, and like it doesn't show the both sides of
It's
things. And
still
so
a binary.
yeah, and so I wanted to, show that when you're bisexual, like there's you don't have to choose the like that's the point. And like just because oh I'm bi now, like I'm only gonna sleep with girls kind of a thing. And so that's unfortunately what a lot of adult books show us. And so I'm like, well, that's missing, gonna write it. And so that's kind of just how these have all been going. um so yeah, I mean, I am noticing, especially like when I'm looking specifically for books to put in our lending library, when I'm trying to find, I want more books about characters that are asexual, like there's not a whole lot.
Okay, I have
And
several recommendations.
uh, or like, yeah, and you like we do get book people who like bring us books that don't kind of fit the lending library theme of the queer BIPOC or female authors, and usually those books or books that we have like extreme triggers and things like that we donate to like the local prison and jails, and to pass that on, so that those have books, and ones that they don't want we take and donate to like Atlas Collective, so they can do them as well. So even if you bring books to us, would they find a happy home, even if they aren't at the project anymore. But I am always researching every book that comes in, to make sure that if it does have triggers or things like that, our people know. And so I've done a ton of book research that I never planned on having to do.
That's yeah, I was gonna ask how you vet for triggers. That's so important and that is a lot of work. I yeah, I that's a lot of work because and very important, especially in an environment in which, your clientele are just more likely to have been hurt.
Yeah.
So that's thank you for doing that work.
Whoops.
Shoot, I had another question for you specifically about that, but I didn't expect to get into this territory, so my brain's behind. Um, uh, okay. Um, with your okay. Yes. Okay. So, with your, it's a romance, right?
Yeah,
Well, you're not children's book. Your
not sure.
is
Yeah,
a supernatural romance,
fantasy. Yeah.
right? There is no area in which I could correctly name a genre. No, if genres are involved, I won't get it right. Yeah. Um, I do notice, because one of my goals is always to just read outside my comfort zone because,
Yeah.
I mean, it's important to me. And it's good for all brains. And I have seen that there does seem to be a thing where, like, a character starts out with a person and then ends up with, if it's a bi character, and ends up with whatever the opposite of that person is. Um, and in the marketing of those two, it isn't like bi story, it's like gay story. Um, and so that is an interesting sort of erasure that I don't think I picked up on. It's not a question. Um, and
Yes,
it's
I'm trying
also
to fix that.
um yeah, so it does sound like, I mean, romance is not a genre that I know anything about, really. I've read a few because I try to read everything. Um but from what I have read, I've read a couple of, like, what's it called? Closed door queer
Yeah.
romances. Um they followed that trajectory that I said. So it's um I don't know, that's just cool that you were just noticing what's missing. And I think that as artists, really, and you can just tell me I'm wrong or that I'm right. Is it not our job to put the art into the world that we need?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. That's what makes it fun.
A little mad earlier you said that the writing comes easily. So you should probably loan that out to the rest of us.
Um, yeah, I think it's the ADHD for sure. My grandma was also a professional writer, and I spent a lot of time with my grandma when she was still alive, and she had like a column of the newspaper that she wrote about it for years and like was had published poetry and like was always so like I think I published my first poem when I was 7 or 8. My grandma would have me write and submit it to American greeting cards and things like that. And so I luckily got it from her. But it just always, I don't remember, I don't think there's been a day in my life that I haven't written. And so it just is part of who I am and it makes it except we kind of talked about this earlier before we started this whole part. Prompts, when it's not my idea, that's when I can't write. But when it's my idea and the thoughts start flowing and it's something that's a smooth sailing, it's the beforehand and the prompts and having to think of an answer to a prompt that usually gets me.
I said something like that. I think prompts are awesome. Um, Objectively. Subjectively, I'm not their biggest fan. Um, and I said something similar to that in on accident, like, not, I didn't really mean it in class, when I was in class this weekend. Um, because prompts are really, really cool, but you have to, and important, and, like, I have a whole video on it. You can watch that. On how prompts work and why we should use them. Um, but what happens to me is I hear the prompt and it's like if somebody asks you what you did this weekend. It's like
Yeah, like
suddenly I've never done anything in my entire life.
what do
My
you
mind,
want for dinner?
yeah. I've never heard of food. My mind,
I'm not hungry. Like, what? You're gonna, don't, yeah, no way.
yeah, suddenly my mind is just blank and I feel pressure. And that's probably, like, I should probably go to therapy about that. But
That might be a trauma response.
Um, but it kind of doesn't matter. Like the prompt exists, but the point is to write. Um, that's what I would tell somebody else in my situation, and it's what my professor said to me over the weekend. I was trying to respond to this prompt because it was a difficult one, and I thought I could use practice in this. It was, I think we were using sounds to add personification to like nature or something. It was a very specific prompt. Um, and so I really tried to do that. Like I was trying to think of like whatever the case, mine was in nature. Um, I was trying to think of like sounds that would act as personification, and I could think of some. But thinking about it while also like sort of doing a narrative thing is a funny place for your mind. So what I'm just to explain the situation. Uh, I said, you know, this was really hard because, you know, I don't think about sound words very often, whatever. Um, and my teacher was like, well, you don't have to, you know, directly do the prompt. And I was like, no, 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 it was important to me to learn about sound words, you know. Um, but yeah, prompts are hard. I don't Today's the day that I talk at Kai instead of asking Kai questions.
It's okay. We've talked.
Yeah. Um, so I'll do a final question or two, and then you can tell me what I maybe should have asked that you would love to tell people. Um, when you're doing your writing, when you're working on a larger project, such as a book, um, do you have any particular process to it?
Usually it starts as a note in my phone under like book idea or like and I put the idea down and then if I remember I wrote the note at some point I'll go back in and kind of make out an outline or like the kind of process. I mean, a children's book is a little bit easier because fewer words, much fewer words, but also less pages and less
Well, there's
dynamic.
more to it's sorry, keep going.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Um, I I have written a children's book. I don't know if I acted like I hadn't, but I have. Um, I what I find difficult about it, because it's just not, I don't know, straightforward. It's not how my brain works, is you kind of have to write it like a script because you have to work with images unless you're BJ Novak and you wrote The Word with No Pictures.
Is what
Even
we
then, I think that because there's a visual element that's important to it, that it was
Ah,
probably written similarly.
yeah, I mean, so like I kind of like wrote the idea down and then because it was my first children's book, I had to do a bunch of research on the number of pages it was supposed to be and like all of those kinds of things and kind of like found okay, well, this is my what I want to see happen and in the order I want to see it happen and got the plot written out um as just like an outline and then from there, kind of wrote the rough draft without thinking of any of like the page order of those things, and then got feedback from different people and workshopped it around of needing to cut things out and lower things and get it on that child level. And then from there, I figured out how many words are gonna be on each page and what each page was kind of gonna look like. And then workshopped it a little bit more with some different people. And then from there, figured out, okay, this is the words on this page. This is what I want the picture on this page to look like. Um, and so it kind of went from there. Rainbow Brain, that's not the actual title of it, but that's will
Everything I do has a working title,
yeah.
and a lot of times people will be like, "You can't call it that." And I'm like, "Okay, it's not the title title."
Uh, I think my first draft of Dandelion's Magic was called Title question mark. And I think that's still how it's saved in my folders on my phone or like my Mac is title question mark or book question mark, I think is what it is.
Cool.
Uh, and so yeah, I went it from there, but like Rainbow Brain has got a lot more words in it. And so but it's also got a lot more pictures, and so pictures that I want to take up, 2 pages, but the text only kind of be on 1 page kind of situations. And so figuring out how I need to spread that out and move that around is a little bit more complex. Um, my adult book is like 121,000 words. And I have another chapter that I still have to write for it and editing to do. And so that one was, okay, this is what needs to happen in this chapter. This is what needs to happen in this chapter. And like that I had to ended up going back through and adding additional chapters and moving things around and realizing that event didn't actually need to happen. It wasn't providing. But I've 10 classes at Midwest Writing Center a couple of times, and worked with one of the classes that was like, these are the things each chapter has to have, and is what is this chapter actually supplying to the narrative and the plot? And if you didn't have a definitive answer, cut it. And so it was a lot of doing that and workshopping.
Man, writing is so much work.
It is. I It's funny because if you go into like your Word documents, it tells you how many hours
Oh my
you've
God.
on a specific
It better
Word
not.
document. It does. And at one point I had opened up my adult book, and it was like in the amount of time since I had gotten it back from an editor and was working on it, that current draft, and the amount of hours I'd put into it, it had been working on that file for the amount of a full-time job while I work a full-time job and have kids and a home to do.
Yeah,
So I
that's
get why people do it as a full-time job because that's all the time you have, really.
yeah, yeah. That's so much. Wow. Wow. Do you sleep?
So I have fibromyalgia, so not doesn't matter how much I sleep, it is never enough. And I
Yeah.
don't drink caffeine, so it's strictly the ADHD meds that keep me going.
That was beautiful. I is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so.
I can say I would love to talk about where you are in the editing process with your novel in a separate day if you're up for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Or we will have just a super episode. Um, Okay, yeah, I'm here. I'm trying to close up cleanly. I'm not going to be able to do it hanging out with somebody I am too comfortable with. Uh, thank you, Kai, for hanging out today. I'm going to give some just real brief updates for the Midwest Writing Center. We have a couple of really cool things coming up, and I'm just going to keep it short. Um, first thing is we are currently accepting submissions to a new anthology partnering with the Galvin Fine Arts Center at St. Ambrose University, looking for short works on the theme of adaptation. Full information about that is on our website, mwcqc.org. It's open to folks from the six county service area in which the Quad Cities is. Um, and folks who get published get $100 and further opportunities to share their work and get more paid. Um, we have two workshops coming up in November. On November 8th, we have Writing Queer Joy, which is a generative poetry workshop with Amy Whitmore, who's an incredible, prolific poet, um, who, yeah, wants to sort of make sure that we can find joy and make our art. Then on November 18th, we have a workshop with Jeffrey Wolf, who is an incredible teacher for really making things accessible and like something that you can really work with. He'll be teaching on research for creatives, specifically for creative writers. Um, And that's something I'm really excited about when I've taken classes from him before on like non-craft things. It's been really, really useful for me. His craft classes are also great, but that's not what this next one is. And that one is November 18th. Both of those are going to be remote, so online via private Zoom meeting. And we also just started, we're sort of doing a test run of a poetry critique group that will be hosted on the third Wednesday of the month in November and December. Um, it uses a modified version of the Liz Lerman critical response process, which is a inquiry-based workshop method. I feel like it's very holistic. It really allows everyone to think more deeply about the work that you're working with. You have to RSVP, but it's on a pay what you can basis, so you pay if you can, pay what you can. We have to RSVP and send your work in advance so everybody can spend some time with it. We'll have some more stuff coming up soon, but those are the highlights. Oh, except I absolutely skipped that we will have a reading at the Atlas Collective on October 23rd. That's in downtown Moline, and that will be writers from the Atlas reading at the Atlas. It'll be a really good time because we get to say Atlas by Atlas. Also because it's a great environment and great people. Um, that is my updates. And for today's writing prompt, give yourself 5, 10 minutes, whatever you can spare, put it on a timer, just write what comes out. I would like for you to write into the idea of finding your worth. I know it's a little deep. If it's a journal, cool. If it's a poem, cool. Um, Write what comes. As always, thanks for hanging out with us, and please write more light into your life.